Hi, I'm Bill Crystal. Welcome back to Conversations. I'm very pleased to be joined again by my friend James Carville. We last had one of these conversations I think right after Memorial Day. Joe Biden was the likely Democratic nominee. He was trailing Donald Trump. We were a little down in the dumps, I would say, even though we concealed it very well, of course. James is always cheerful, but I think we were slightly pessimistic about things. So it's a different world now, I guess, or is it? Where do we stand? Where does the race really stand now, and what should we be looking for?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And secondly, yes, it is decidedly better. I mean, it's not overwhelming. It wasn't a huge shift, but we're probably down two or three, and we're probably up two or three. And in this environment, that's a lot. I don't know how much you can move, but what we're testing, and I think we'll test the upward number here in the next couple of weeks, at least I hope we do. But yes, it is. Everything is better. The polls are better. The fundraising is better. The enthusiasm is better. It's just you'd have to be. It's just unreasonable to even think it's not better. Now, how much it is, I see some of these giddy people on TV and like, hey, knock it off. I mean, you laugh after the election, not before the election.
You were a longtime believer that President Biden shouldn't run for re-election for another 4 years, even though he's been a good president, that people did not want an 82-year-old and all that, and they wanted a choice of someone younger. I think you certainly vindicated in that judgment, in my opinion, by the wave of relief almost and enthusiasm that followed Biden stepping down. How much of it is due, though, to how much of it is a positive judgment on Vice President Harris at this point? She has had 2 weeks to campaign and sort of reintroduce herself.
Not as much as some people think. All right. We were just people, it's like I tell people, if you have an infected wisdom tooth and you go to the dentist and pull it out, you feel on top of the world. I mean, God, you really don't feel any better than you would if you never had the infected wisdom tooth, but you do feel better now it's gone. Just as an example. But I think that people wanted to like her. All right, they were so glad to have a relief, and they came in with kind of disposition. And to her credit, just literally everything she's done since, was it 3 weeks now? Things like 300 years, but
No, I think just 2.5, maybe two.
it was on a
Plus,
Sunday,
right?
so yeah, I guess Sunday
Two
would
and
be,
2 weeks and 2 days. Yeah,
yeah.
we're talking Tuesday Tuesday the 6th, I think.
But so far she has done nothing to dampen people's enthusiasm. She hasn't done anything remotely dumb. So I mean, I have reason to actually be encouraged. And maybe she looks like she's really grown. And people would tell me that. That's one thing I will say is people internally would say, James, she's different. She's more confident, and not just White House staff people that would go in there, economists, historians, the same people go in and out of the White House. Doesn't matter who's in there. All
Right.
right. And to a person, they would all say, she's very confident and asks very good questions and seems to be well briefed. And so I'm happy that she's like this. I'm not totally surprised.
And you think that there's reasonable hope that lasts? They've done a good job, I think, don't you think, of helping her, of rolling her out? She hasn't done any interviews in these 2 weeks. I notice people are beginning to whine and complain about that. That seems to me to be
So
sensible. Well,
stupid.
what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, where is it written you have to do press interviews?
Yeah,
All
right.
right, it's nowhere. Secondly, she's accepted the debate that Trump has weaseled out of and said, I got a good idea. Ask me the question at the debate. I mean, this is now it may be in her interest to do that. I was on Katie Couric has like a podcast like this, I guess, and I was on there last week. And I said, well, maybe she could do like a Sarah Palin thing, but maybe she shouldn't, But I mean, as you well know, these things are kind of fraught with danger. But I I am not impressed by the argument that she needs to sit down and be grilled for, for 50 minutes on Sunday morning TV. I don't think that's what we need. But I expect she might do a little bit more than people think.
So we're speaking on Tuesday morning, the 6th. She and her vice presidential pick will, I guess, go on a multi-state sort of tour, bus tour, or bus and plane tour, whatever it'll be, for the next 5, 6 days. Reminds me a little of Clinton Gore '92, which you remember
Right.
extremely well. But maybe that, and then presumably there's a little downtime, and then the convention. So talk us through what to look for, what advice you would give them over these next 2, 3 weeks, which seem pretty important to me, right?
Right. So politics, have these sort of trite. Every journey begins with a step. Okay, we all know that. People really don't know who she is. We think we know her, but we really kind of don't. I mean, there's a Fox caricature of who she is. We know she's a California liberal. We know she's multi-ethnic or biracial. I don't know, man. I hate talking about that shit anyway, but we know all of that. What she has a chance to do, and she's got it pretty much front and center between now and the Thursday night of the convention, tell us more about you. Make us like you. All right? We're open to it. I mean, we're definitely, we're on a date here, and we like you going into it, and try not to pick your nose. But I'm saying is, she needs more definition because people really do not know her, and I think she has a chance to do that. And I also think she should come out with some policy prescriptions. If it's just you want Biden or you want Trump, that's not going to inspire people. I experience. I want to push forward. There's a guy I want to recommend. Well, gosh, I read it this morning. There's a client who I think is a very bright guy. He had a Democratic senator from Hawaii, Brian Shantz, I think is something right. She ought to listen to him. I know it's not a swing state, but you ought to get a guy a call because he's actually got some pretty good ideas, I thought. And anything that she can do with cost of living, affordability, that's all gold. And mine that gold. And just a couple of more things. They don't have to be radical or anything like that. Can be common sense, mainstream, left of center, I guess you would say, kind of ideas. And people like that. I mean, she can start with the extension of the tax cuts on incomes over $400,000 that are going to expire next year. Somebody, these are places that you can start, and you can act prospective and future oriented. I think that's important also.
Let's go over those a little bit more though. On the bio, so there's the bio side and let's say the issues side. On the biographical side, anything particular she should stress apart from just being pleasant and charming and all that stuff, obviously. But
look, her bio is not all American. I mean, I think both of her parents were professors at Berkeley.
right,
Okay, most people. Okay, now I don't have anything against Berkeley professor. Okay, I don't start this. Yeah, but she doesn't have about a bootstrap story. I mean, I think she grew up relatively affluent. I mean, college professors are, they don't starve to death. I don't know. She's got a lot of people, and she can talk about it, but I don't think her bio is that's the kind of thing that she's gonna win this on. It's fine to talk about it, experiences she had. I think if I were her, in terms of my past experience, I would talk more about being an AG and being a kind of consumer advocate and being a DA and being tough on crime. Seems to be kind of in right now. Say so myself. I've never been very much of a pro-crime guy.
It's been funny. In for a long time. I don't think, especially for Democrats, they need to show it, right?
That's been a serious flaw in, most Democrats don't fall for that. Most elected Democrats don't fall for that. But it sure does set something in, and there's enough. I don't want to forget this. There's a big event today in the Democratic Party, huge, and that is the primary election in the first congressional district of Missouri. Think of it as St. Louis, where you have the ultimate, what I'd call squadette or whatever, in Cori Bush, and they are Mark Melman and them, and she's, of course, let's just say she's very pro-Palestinian, to put it at that. But that's hard. It's a kind of an understatement.
Right.
And she's running against a guy named Wesley Bell, who's actually a prosecutor, and describes himself as a black liberal. Remember that? You scare people now. Oh, Jesus Christ, yes, of course. Come on in. And they put a bunch of money in there, but they're running a really smart campaign. All right, they're not running it. And he's got good consultants. I'm talking about dollars. They talk about she voted against the infrastructure bill, one of 10 people. And I hope I'm right, but I think Bell's going to win. And tomorrow I will be commenting on it.
Yeah, that is. I mean, and that would be the second person in the squad to be defeated.
Right.
And I think in both cases, the campaigns, even though a lot of people were interested in it, probably because of Middle East politics and other stuff, the actual messaging of the campaign was more about just not being a radical, obstructionist, really, and let's kind of being a mainstream liberal, right?
These people have literally been, not only are they wrong about everything, they destroy everything. So we're going to have to deal with Harris's 2019.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Let's talk about that, because I think the ad she had up today, I saw the new one, is pretty much along the lines you're suggesting. She's a prosecutor, but they've cleverly, I think, linked together being tough on crime, well, not linked together, but said she's prosecuted in a way that criminals, and she's also gone after big corporations that are ripping people off. So it's sort of like she gets the populist economic stuff in a little bit, and she gets the tough on crime in.
Good for her. You go, girl.
That seems like an intelligent ad. But let's talk about playing defense a little. It seems to me the two biggest problems she has are the 2019 positions she took and that Democratic primary. Why was that primary so crazy? I sort of can't even remember how. I'd forgotten until I saw one of these Republican ads how, frankly, nuts it all seemed. And then I think the 2020, with the pick of Governor Walz, the 2020 riots in Minnesota, which were pretty bad, honestly, and which there's some, I don't even understand it, about this fund that she urged people to give money to bail people out. But anyway, they're going to put the crime issue front and center, the Republicans, I believe, like today. And so how would you advise her to deal with that? But so either 2019 and or 2020.
There's a minor fact, and I would bring it up. The crime rate since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has taken office has plummeted. Yes, like historic numbers. So I don't quite know what you're talking about, but we took over a high crime country under the administration of Donald Trump, which, by the way, became a high crime country under the administration of Donald Trump. All right. So I think we can definitely talk about that. The Democratic parts of the Democratic Party, not Joe Biden, not Democratic primary voters, decidedly not, lost their minds. And everybody thought this was the wave of the future. The identity politics is being essential to any discussion of politics. And of course, it was a giant mistake. She bought into that, as did other people. Whoever advised her in 2019, I hope to throw them all out in the Pacific Ocean. And, to a guy like me, you could see this coming. So I went back and looked, and April 27th, 2021, I did an interview on Vox, and I said, this stuff is killing us. This is the dumbest thing that you can imagine. And I'll give myself credit. I was right. I call defund the police the three stupidest words in the history of the English language. And of course, no one's talking about it now. And that just everything that they touch turns to garbage. And I think people have caught on to them. But the people that never, and people say, James, you say some controversial stuff. I said, it's not controversial. 90% of the people agree with you. All right, that's not as controversial when 51% agree with you.
Yeah,
I mean, it was. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and you said it to me in our first conversation, which was 2021, I think, at the Amherst Faculty Lounge and all that. And people were all, gee, how could you insult the Amherst Faculty Lounge and the English professors at Amherst? That was terrible of you to do that, James.
I thought it was actually a pretty good.
It was a good.
Pretty good way of driving across.
Does she have to almost explicitly say, "Look, I said these things in 2019.
Absolutely.
But I've learned in 3.5 years in the White House." I mean, does she have to almost explicitly walk away from some of them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you live and you learn. I've learned. I've seen how global conflicts work. I've seen how domestic unrest works. I've seen these things, and you can accuse me of growing. All right.
That'd be good.
You can. One of my favorites was John Maynard Keynes. He said, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do?"
Yeah.
I mean, you can sit there and argue forever. I've just changed my mind.
Yeah.
You might have argued in 2002 and Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama would agree with you that gay marriage was a bad idea. Okay, I've changed my mind. You said, what do you well, 1997, you said this. Okay, fine. I don't think that anymore.
It'd be interesting to see if she actually just says those words, "I've changed my mind." I think it would actually be effective. And it would play into the notion of or help the notion of making her campaign forward looking, not relitigating everything she ever said and not
Right.
relitigating,
Knowing what I know about this office, if you talk to me 4 years from now, there are going to be some things I've changed my mind on also.
Yeah.
that you got to get out of it with some humanity and humor. But if you start explaining structural racism and police reform and community outreach, you're dead. You just, at that point, you're dead. And by the way, if Black Lives Matter is a real estate holding company. And they actually started with a pretty good idea. I mean, it's fair to say for 400 years, there's been a concerted effort to dehumanize blacks, particularly black males. It just is. And when it started, I thought it had some sympathy for it. And then, of course, it was what Eric Hoffer said. Every movement begins as a cause, morphs into a business, and ends up a racket. They didn't belong to get to the racket stage at all.
So she has this little tour with the two of them for the next week. Then the convention. Anything special about the convention you would recommend? Not recommend? I mean, it'll be Biden will speak on the first night, I suppose, and exit, which is typically the way you do it with the outgoing incumbent president. Right. But who? I don't know. Special message, special themes. What's the key thing to accomplish?
I think, in the back of my mind, if this convention should be about a plan is we get you. All right. And the more that it's like that, and and there's some. I would also I'd say one thing: don't let it become a celebration of coastal culture. That's a real problem because everybody's going to want to be there. Everybody's going to be wanting to shoehorn in. Pick your speakers. Pick your entertainment. I was very pleased this morning in Wisconsin. Apparently, I don't keep up with music that much, being a little older, but they got a Wisconsin rock band, an indie band or something that's playing. That's cool. That's the of course, you got Ben Wickler there, so he's not going to let anything stupid happen. But just don't get overrun with Beyonce or Taylor Swift or anything like that. Not that Beyonce or Taylor Swift, anything wrong with them. But if you get people saying these people are all too cool for me, I can't fit in that, then you're going to lose. Just, remember all of that. And Tim Walz is just an antidote against all of that kind of stuff. But we'll see. That would be my. You should have a good convention. You'd have to really, really screw this up to have a bad one. Yeah. You have too much going for you.
But as you say, she's, for all that we know her, she's not really well known. So you have the standard challenge, but also opportunity of a challenger, of a, in a way. I mean, we'll come to Trump in a minute, but he's kind of the incumbent in this scenario, it seems to be. And she's the less well-known challenger who has to define herself. And Walz is a very little-known VP pick. He hasn't run for president himself the way others have, or so forth. So it's a pretty undefined ticket, I'd say, as these things go, which is both can be good or bad, right?
Yeah, and you got a chance at definition. It's what is the definition you put on this? Okay, that's exactly right. It goes back to the original point. She's not really that well known. And the first person to grab a paintbrush and start painting is going to be the memory, and we have a shot because it can be hard for them to break through.
Yes. Are you surprised that I think the relative failure of the Trump campaign to define her negatively over these first 2 weeks? I mean, I kind of expected them to really come out of the box with stuff on her that, from 2019, if only what she said then, to really, spend a lot of money and in the swing states. But maybe she just had so much momentum. I don't know that it didn't kind of penetrate. I'm sort of, she's had a very good 2 weeks, but do you agree that the Trump campaign's had a not very good 2 weeks?
This is why the bulwark exists. There's something is going on at Mar-a-Lago. I'm not sure what it is. Was that black journalist thing. Some people actually think that was planned. But this guy, La Savita, Susie Wiles, they're not stupid. I mean, they've won elections before.
Right.
All right. And what's coming out of there is you're right. They don't know where to go. They let it get away from them. It was like they got hit in them, and they were totally, they didn't see this coming. I mean, if you and I were running that campaign, we said, look, I'd say, Bill, there's three things can happen. Biden drops out, it's Harris. Biden drops out, it's an open thing or something. But you would have a plan that you would pull off the shelf. You would be ready for that. Or you would anticipate it. From what little bit I can read, they were just standing there feeling good about themselves, and then they got hit in the mouth, and there was no concerted, organized, thought out reaction, which is pretty amazing. It really is.
I guess it's of a piece with the overconfidence that went with picking Vance at the Republican convention. I mean, one thing, one does forget how fast it all happened. Trump assassination attempt Saturday, was that the 13th of July? Convention begins the 15th. Vance is picked the 15th. Trump gives a speech on the Thursday. Biden out on the Sunday. And people as late as that Wednesday, Thursday, I think I did Axe's show with Murphy. We were all slightly down in the dumps that the move to persuade President Biden to step aside, which we've all been involved in, it was not going to succeed. I actually was a little more optimistic, but one forgets. So to be fair to them, maybe they just assumed that Biden was going to be stubborn and Pelosi had no more cards to play, and that was they could just count on that. I don't know. What do you think?
That's why the bulwark exists. Okay, I mean, or Tim Alberta. That's why, that's why Tim exists. I don't know, but it's certainly, I was in early July. I said President Biden will not be up for re-election in 2024. Did I have inside information? No, but if you go in the New York Times, you say something in the first sentence of an op-ed, you got to have a lot of confidence in your thought process. And I did. I didn't think it was a way, but at the end of the day, when he snapped at Jason Crow, I knew it was, and I said, that's not who he is. I mean, Jason Crow, if there's anything that modern Democratic Party ought to be about, it should be Jason Crow.
Right.
He's a prototype of what a modern Democrat should be. And I just think Biden was tired, older, cranky. And it was just a sign that he was going to eventually come around.
Yeah, no, you were right. You told me, I remember during the period that sort of the Herb Stein thing, what can't continue won't continue. I mean, I feel like that you always had more confidence that it would have to work itself out. It might take 2 or 3 weeks, which it did, but it did. So let's assume that the Trump campaign got blindsided a little, made some, I don't know, Trump himself seems a little rattled, actually. I think by running against Harris, he really had internalized the notion that he was going to get to beat up, Biden and be the challenger against the incumbent for a long time. What now, though? I mean, they're not, as you say, Lasavita and Susie Wiles and Fabrizio know what they're doing. They're presumably trying to adjust. Maybe Trump can adjust. I don't know. What do you think? How much has Trump sort of genuinely seemed to have lost it a little bit? And how much, but if not to give advice to the Trump campaign, but What should the Harris campaign be preparing for the Trump campaign to do? Because I think it would be also overconfident to assume they're going to be rattled for 3 months here, right?
So the first thing you anticipate is obvious. They're going to put 2019 front and center. It's pretty clear. I mean, they'll get around to it, but they'll eventually get there. Uh, so I think this is, I hope this is going on. I have some reason to think it's a little bit more than a hope. Trump is like a guy with an act that worked brilliantly, and then all of a sudden it didn't work as well. And you keep trying harder. You tell the same jokes, and you tell them a little bit louder, you have a little more emphasis, but they don't have the same punch. And when you watch him in that rally in Georgia, I think is significant because, he didn't fill it up, and he blamed Georgia State, a well-known liberal coastal elite institution. But the people were walking out, and his reaction is, I got to keep them. I'll just get crazier. And so he's like Brian Kemp, okay, who's, like Brian Kemp is Karl Rove's kind of wet dream of what a modern Republican should be. And he's just like savaging the guy. And you can see he's trying to do anything he can to keep the crowd and keep them on their feet and keep them motivated. And he's, like I say, he's an old comedian, whose punchlines just don't work like they used to. And he's just struggling.
And do you think it hard for him to regain his balance? I mean, it's hard to know, right?
I don't. All I can say is we need to do everything we can to keep him off his balance. Okay, not predict if he can get his balance back. And I think the debates are golden opportunities because he doesn't want to do it. He just does not want to do it. He's got too much at risk. It's a multiracial female that he's got to go against. And Vance is going to have to debate Walz, and Walz is going to pretty confident in Walz's position. And if I was Walz, I'd say, I actually use a sofa to watch television on. But anyway. So but I do think the debate, the argument over debates is pretty essential here to keeping Trump off guard. I do.
Yeah, develop that a little bit. So normally I might, these debates are kind of like
right.
You end up endless things and then you end up agreeing or whatever. But you think this is actually important for Harris to emphasize that she wants the debate?
Right.
Should she actually accept a debate that's different from the ABC one that was originally set up?
So here we are, and we have a normal conversation, August conversation about debates. It's something we forgot. Something actually happened on June 27th.
Yeah, right.
Okay. It
right.
actually happened right in front of us. So there's this, shall we say, the debate awareness index is pretty high right now compared to normal. And this is not, let's get Jim Baker and, Mickey Cantor and, Frank Fahrenkopf and hammer out the rules here. This is not where we are on this. And so you had an originally scheduled, let's say September 4th, September 10th, ABC debate.
Right.
That he's backed out of. And then he says he's going to debate on Fox. And, as they're playing, but my idea is to say, good, let's debate on Fox on September 18th. Because that is the night of the day they're going to sentence your fat ass in Manhattan. So I'm going to make it convenient for you. You can just go right uptown from the Manhattan courthouse to the Fox studios. I know right where it is. And it's right down 6th Avenue. And you can have your debate. And, so it's 90 minutes. And Fox, no matter what, they have a narrow operating range that they can operate on. They can't set you up that much. And if they do, you're going to win anyway. And they know that. And plus she has a great line to say, well, you paid $750 million for the line. Why would I believe your question? But go ahead, next. You go, Brett. Okay, there's all kinds of, you have a lot in your toolkit. And then he is in, now he's caught in a vice. Because he said he would do it on Fox. She said fine. She made the date specific. And I think that's the kind of infighting that you got to do. And I think it'd be pretty effective.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And then they end up debating, you think?
Uh, I'm not very good for there's going to be a lot of heat. It's going to give her, or giving your opponent an answer to everything. All right. Well, why didn't he say it to my face? And she said that at first. That's something that we used in the, hey, if you got something to say about me, you son of a bitch, say it to my face.
Right.
You've heard that growing up. I mean, that's as common as anything. It's particularly common in middle America. So as long as he does not debate her, she has a classic answer to anything that's thrown at her. All right. And he's instinctive enough to realize this. He's got a lot to risk either way. I would much rather be her than him. And of course, she also has another kind of built-in advantage. It should kind of be judged against Biden's June the 27th performance, which is, it's pretty low bar.
Yeah.
But I think the whole debate question is elevated, and I think she has a pretty good position in it.
I hadn't really focused on that. I think it's really a good point. I mean, of course, I'm aware that June 27th is the most consequential presidential debate in history at this point, since it caused an
Was
actual change in candidates. But I hadn't. But you're right. So there's, as you say, greater debate awareness in general, which gives her a chance to use the issue in a more maybe important way than typically there's like such tit for tat. It's like totally
right, right,
trivial. I think.
right,
Yeah.
right,
The effect
right,
of you said you would debate there here. We should have three
right.
debates, not two. Whatever.
Was to send Chicken George out, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But this is more. You can't use a historical benchmark
Right.
to talk about this because the debates have now taken on, near legendary status in American politics.
Yep. I mean, speaking of historical benchmarks, so I mean, on the one hand, we've never seen an election like this in all kinds of ways, particularly Biden getting out. I was thinking about this the other day, and this is not a criticism. I think it's the first ticket in modern times since the modern primary system came into being, where both candidates on one ticket, in this case on the Democratic ticket, neither of them has ever gotten a vote in a Democratic primary for president. That is, every candidate, every race we've all been involved in or watched. So in the early days, they only had a few primaries, Humphrey and all that, but still every nominee in both parties had gotten some primary votes, right? Certainly
Yeah.
from 72 on, 76 on, let's just say, and mostly had won the primaries. And then the VP nominees had often run and gotten at least some primary votes, or especially if they were the losing candidate, or Gore had run in 88 and then was picked in 92. So it just accentuates sort of, I think, how little, what uncharted waters we're in, right? I mean, we don't have.
Why don't you should make a list? People that listen to this, you make a list of all of this first time this happened in the
Yeah.
2024 election. Okay, first time somebody dropped out, first time they had a debate in June. So this kind of something tells me we're going to see a lot more first here. We're not done with first. Okay,
Yeah.
we should have a running list of first time blank. And it's the first time, obviously first time a woman's been ahead of the ticket, or first time I hate the term woman of color, but that's okay. You're not I don't have an objection to it. I just think it's such progressive arrogance to assume that everybody who is not white is the same.
Right.
That's why it drives me crazy. Okay, but anyway, whatever. It's first non-Caucasian to ever be at the top of the ticket. That first to never get a single primary vote. And that's one of my favorite arguments, and I get this a lot. I like to do kind of right-wing media, unlike most people, because it keeps me. It's good when you're in old age, they tell you to do these, you should play bridge, and you should do. I go there, and they call it the Democratic Party, okay, but it's anti-Democrat. I said, if anybody felt, if some Democratic primary vote in Indiana is mad that their vote for Biden wasn't counted, I hadn't heard from them. Okay.
Right.
And if some donor said, well, it's actually one donor, well, good, give him his money back. Okay, fine. I mean, the idea that and that's always been a fascinating thing. The Republicans used to love to call us the Democrat Party.
Right.
All right. That, I think I told you a story about it. It was good. But Clayton Yida, who is the chairman of the RNC, was the first to call it the Democratic Party. And they asked him why. And he said, well, the political party has a right to be called what it wants to be called,
Right.
which seemed like a kind of reasonable thing that a polite guy from Nebraska would say. I mean, it's, you call people what you want. But that argument is beyond silly.
Yeah.
But
What?
it's interesting. They never got a vote.
Yeah. Yeah. What attacks on Trump are most effective in your judgment? There's been, democracy does work, it doesn't work. Weird works, it doesn't work. I don't know. The numbers that spooked me, and I think you and Sosnick and others, was that retrospectively people think they were better off under the Trump presidency. That's a bit of an uphill climb if that number stays the way it is, I guess. But anyway, just what would you be? What would your 2 or 3 points be?
I would have three attacks. Okay, you ready? Drum roll, please. 1, past. 2, yesterday. 3, stale. Okay.
Yeah. Those sound familiar to each. It sounds like one attack, not 3 attacks.
Okay, yeah.
I got the point, right? Yeah, that was quick of me
You
there.
say 3 things, but you're saying one thing because there's a the political science department at UMass Amherst is actually pretty good, and they do a very good poll. They're releasing it over the week.
Yeah, it is good.
The reasons to vote for Harris, you have to look at it. Protect Social Security, Medicare, 32. We'll fight for reproductive right, 32. It represents the future, 66.
Yeah.
Okay. So just take the obvious, which is he is yesterday. He wants to go back. I want to push forward. Don't get distracted from what the public really thinks about this.
And yeah, no, I think I actually talked about that UMass poll, and I guess in the newsletter yesterday or something, because I thought it's more helpful than a lot of others. It just seems to ask questions intelligently about issues and stuff, and it shows Harris up 3 now, which seems to be about where things may be. Which I guess
right. That gives you some confidence. It's certainly not outside of any. It's right in the. But the questions are really. Really worth taking a look at because it gives you a little bit more. It's deeper. I think these are sounds like an oxymoron, but really talented political scientists.
Okay, there you go. I mean, so this is your version of change of what was the 92 slogan?
Change versus more the same.
And you think that
I would say change versus going, but yesterday versus tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because he's not in. But you want to project him as stale, part of the same thing that keeps not producing anything like that.
Yeah, but going back, I think, is a key.
He's going back is the advantage.
Going forward.
We don't want to go back. We want to push forward.
Yeah. Now, for all the change and uncharted waters, we still have an electoral college, and I suppose, well, tell me. I mean, do you have any controversial or non-obvious views on which states matter, or the Midwest versus the Sun Belt, and all that kind of stuff?
So, but nothing changes math. Okay, and the math is you got to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But I think Georgia's tightened up. Actually, I think North Carolina much bigger opportunity than people think because I think there could be some negative coattails with the gubernatorial candidate there.
Right.
Obviously, Arizona is more competitive. Maybe the state that traditionally votes Republican, I feel better about is North Carolina. The state that is traditionally voted Democratic that I don't feel as good as I should is Nevada. Right. Now I take the swap.
Yep.
But the insurance policy is Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and I do think that Walz brings some comfort level to. I don't think it's like direct, but to the kind of upper Midwest, which is really critical. But math doesn't change. I'm involved with a group. We raised over $100 million, and we concentrate on 77 counties in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. None of them Philadelphia, Detroit, or Milwaukee. And if we can cut the margins, I think we can win those states. We did it. It worked in 2020, and I have every reason to believe it can help in 2024. But that's not going to change. Let's understand one thing: math is still a viable topic here.
Say a word about that, not so much the project, but just the thinking behind the project, because I think it's such an important point that I'm amazed how many people don't get it, intelligent people who follow politics, right. Which is they sort of think, well, you're losing this county, so you got to focus on the other counties. But of course, a vote you pick up in a statewide, this isn't true for congressional districts, but in a statewide race, losing, if you had two counties the same size, let's just stipulate that to make it easy, picking up a point in the county you're losing 66-34 counts exactly the same as picking up a point in the county you're winning 80-20, right? I mean,
It actually is more. Okay, so I'll go through the thinking, but you're dead on, spot on. What we would do is we were very much into finding videos of Trump. We wanted to be the Jon Stewart video vault archive. And what we realized is that it really didn't matter that much. I mean, so then we sat down and we would look at, Cambria County, Pennsylvania, and Hillary lost it. I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me, but maybe she lost 78-22. And we said, man, if we could lose this thing 74-26, in Blair County and Luzerne County, and you just, you go through the whole laundry list of them, that you would really, in effect, change sea level. That was our total thinking, and that we could get much more bang for it. So if you think about it, you pull out a new voter in Philadelphia, you net one vote. You get a Trump 2016 voter in Cambria County, and they become a Biden 2020 voter. You actually net two votes. The math works in your favor. And we were able, in most of our donations are, pretty high-end people, in a lot of them in finance, and they understand that. And I'd say, look, if you got 10 things and you got 4 underperforming assets, it's pretty good if you get one of them to perform a little less worse.
Right. Less underperformance counts just as much in the stock market as better overperformance, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And when you're fortunate enough to have people that understand that and can explain it, it's a valuable thing, because most people want to just give money to Amy McGrath or fund something that they like. A Detroit voter registration project, I have nothing against. I'm all for Detroit voter registration projects, but that's what other people would do. It's not what we do. And then we're kind of a one-trick pony kind of people.
No, let me ask you one, maybe close with this. In our previous conversation, actually the two we had where you were worried about Biden, you commented that he seemed to be holding the older white voters okay, but there was massive erosion among younger voters and Black and Hispanic voters, I think. Harris changed that equation much? Does she have a challenge with the older white voters? Does she still hold them? How does that work?
Maybe she has a potential to hold them, or most of them, but what she does really have advantage. We had John Della Volpe on our podcast last week. He's a Harvard Youth Survey guy, which actually, in spite of being from your alma mater, it's actually quite good.
No, they do a pretty good. They do a pretty big survey of young voters, right?
And he said there's real changes, that there is, and I believe it. And I think the upside of getting more under 30, more non-whites, particularly Blacks, excited, is considerably better than the downside is that some of the older voters who Biden may not vote or back off a little bit, but that's an exchange I'd be happy to make.
Yeah, my own view, and also if they were already for Biden, I kind of doubt that they desert a Harris ticket. So. I know if they already had gone to Trump, which of course many of them have, maybe Biden could have gotten a couple more back, which Harris won't get. But I'm inclined to think that she, and I suppose Walz, I mean, I wasn't crazy about that pick, but I think you could argue he helps with that demographic actually, right? I mean, he's the most
So
Biden-like VP candidate, I guess, of the ones
I
who are
think
in play.
I said so. Harris went more with the Obama model and the Clinton model.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
Okay,
it.
okay. We kind of went generational. She sort of went steady governance. But I tell you, the people that I know in Minnesota that know him, apparently it's just a nice, been very, from the Democratic point of view, has been very effective, and is kind of what you see. And I personally like Shapiro a lot. I call him a friend of mine. But you know, it would have been a San Francisco, Philadelphia ticket.
Right,
And I, you know, you know, that has always kind of bothered me that we're a little too coastal.
right,
And you know, it's freshwater. They decided on freshwater, not saltwater. And
right.
it's basically that simple, I think. But I would have, my number one pick would have been Bashir, but so be it.
Yeah, I feel like that gets you a lot of the, but whatever.
I don't know. It gets you a photo. I'm a visual. What about Walsh? I'm so on this. I'm so on this train, and you know, blowing the whistle, and we're rolling. This is the choice, and let's roll.
Speaking of final question, speaking of VP candidates, I have a hunch that Vance could hurt actually the Trump ticket a little more than people think. Normally, VPs don't matter much, as we've been. I think that's the conventional wisdom, except maybe for '92. I think where you guys were helped by the Gore pick, and '80, which I do think Bush helped Reagan as a kind of taking the edge off the
Oh.
charge of extremism. But do you agree that Vance is weird enough, to use Walz's term, that it not only doesn't help Trump but could actually hurt him?
Well, I do because I don't think we through finding out things about JD Vance. Okay, you know, as I say, I think there are more shoes in that closet. And like today, but he gave a book blurb to Jack Prospect.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Have you ever? Yeah, I mean, all right. This is some out there stuff, dude. Let me tell you, you know, and I know people ask me to do a book blurb, and yeah, and I'm very generous about book blurbs. Cannot, no, this is like you
Right.
do the basic stuff. So somebody say, "Hey, James, I'm professor of political science at UCSD, and can you do a book blurb?" And you know, I'll look up the guy, and oh, okay, he looks all right. Sure, it's a thrilling book. You should read it. It's full of insight, and everybody's done that shit. Okay, we all know that. But man, this is a bridge too far. And I just think you're gonna keep finding, because I kind of think that's who he is.
Yeah.
And he's really into this crazy look. I think the people that say we need higher birth rates actually have a point.
Yeah.
I'm not a guy that just dismisses, but the how you achieve it and you know what else you do and everything else is kind of a, to say the least, a delicate subject. And they want to have some kind of a religious, they do. I'm sorry. And the guy that has been most influential in all this is a guy from Baton Rouge named Rod Dreher. And the press pays too little attention to Rod because he's very there on that kind of nationalistic. He lives in Hungary now. Sure, you've
Right.
been worried about. But but Rod is very, as you know, in that world, because you had to deal with it more than most people had to deal with. He's really, really influential. And and that's a lot of that kind of thinking that you would, you know, have some basically three-child policy.
Right. And also, yeah, I agree. I mean, the religious nationalist stuff and the intolerance and the mean spiritedness. I just feel like all that Trump gets
Yeah,
away with a ton because as you said earlier, it's a shtick, and people
right.
kind of assume he doesn't quite believe a lot of it, and he's irresponsible and all that. But Vance, it's like DeSantis, right? I mean, it's sort of you get the unattractive side of Trump without any of the, stuff taking the edge off. It feels like to me.
And the other thing, you just know there's more behind that door.
Yeah,
You,
that's
you know
interesting.
we're not through. All right.
James, you got to go. I got to go.
Yes,
This has
sir.
been terrific, very
Thanks,
insightful.
really.
I hope that I assume Vice President Harris will be watching it when we release it tomorrow when she's on the road there with Governor Walz. She has a little time, and we will get back together and see how we stand in a month, I guess.
I'm confident somebody will bring it up to her. I don't know if she'll watch it, but maybe.
Okay, well, summary.
I understand.
That's what
I
staff.
understand.
That's what staff are for.
Understand.
The best of the conversation. You know.
One of the great joys of this campaign is people I've like worked against all my life. I've come to work with and spent time with, and you know, we're watching the Olympics, and you know, I love one of the things about if you play sports. The good thing about running track is you see the same people all the time. You actually, when you're warming up for a race, you're actually shooting the bull with a guy. You know, and when you play football, you just see somebody through a helmet, or you know, you don't see them. And it's what I like about politics. We kind of like track athletes. We all kind of hang out together and get to know each other and that kind of stuff.
Well, it's been a
We
pleasure
still
for
want to
me.
win.
Yeah, pleasure for me too. But let's win. I think that would be good too. Make it even more of a pleasure.
Yes,
James
sir.
Carville,
Thank you,
James,
Bill.
thank you for joining me, and
my
thank you all
pleasure.
for joining us on Conversations.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your interest in this program means a lot to me. I appreciate it.